Welcome back. Well, tonight, our team, we've told you recently about a new state law preventing homeowners associations from banning pickup trucks and work trucks.
Car dealerships across America are collapsing faster than anyone predicted. A brutal new law flipped the auto industry on its head. Lots are frozen, margins are gone, and the system dealers depended on for decades is cracking in real time. This isn't just their problem. It's your money, your mobility, and your freedom. Which dealers are already dying? Why didn't the industry stop this spiral? And what happens to you when the collapse hits your town? The law that lit the lot on fire. This was not regulation. It was an ultimatum with fines sharp enough to slice a business in half. In the summer of 2024, federal regulators unveiled new emission standards that tightened the leash on every manufacturer selling cars in the United States. The penalties for missing the targets were not abstract. They amounted to thousands of dollars per vehicle, a financial hammer that could fall hardest on the very models that kept showrooms alive. For automakers, the challenge was to meet the targets through cleaner fleets. For dealers, the fallout arrived in the form of allocation shock. Suddenly, familiar trucks and sport utility vehicles that once anchored profits were rationed or marked up before they even reached the lot. Compliance burden meant that manufacturers pushed out more hybrid and electric models, often with higher sticker prices and uncertain demand. The equation broke down quickly. Dealers could no longer rely on a steady pipeline of best-selling gas models. Instead, they were asked to carry units that checked regulatory boxes but did not always match what local buyers wanted. For the average consumer, this translated into confusion and frustration. Why did their local lot have a dozen plug-in sedans gathering dust, while the family-size gasoline truck had a 6-month waiting list? The answer was buried in pages of federal emissions rules, but the pain was visible in every stalled sale. But emissions were not the only grenade. Another rule blew up the playbook dealers used for decades: the transparency shock. When the lights came on, the margins disappeared. For decades, dealerships relied on layers of mystery built into the buying process. Sticker prices were merely invitations, not commitments. Hidden markups appeared in financing paperwork. Customers often walked away unsure of what they had paid for until the monthly bill arrived. That era began to crumble with the Federal Trade Commission's CARS rule, officially called the Combating Auto Retail Scams Rule. The CARS rule mandated that every advertised price reflect the true cost to drive off the lot, including all mandatory fees. It outlawed junk fees for phantom services like window etching or nitrogen-filled tires that provided little value. It required dealers to secure clear, documented consent before tacking on add-ons. On paper, this looked like a win for drivers. In practice, it gutted revenue streams that many dealerships considered essential for survival. The blow might have eased when a federal court struck the rule down in late 2024, yet the celebration was short-lived. State attorneys general, emboldened by the national debate, began pursuing their own lawsuits. From Illinois to Arizona, multi-million-dollar settlements made headlines, proving that even without a federal rulebook, the legal spotlight was burning hotter than ever. Dealers found themselves caught between shrinking margins and rising legal exposure. And while lawyers battled, the lots themselves told a quieter, deadlier story. If you're following this far, you already know this story runs deeper than headlines admit. Hitting like helps more people see what's really happening. Drop a comment with your thoughts. I'm reading every single one. Do you think dealerships deserve this collapse, or is the system stacked against them? Lots frozen in time. You can hear the silence of unsold cars louder than any showroom pitch. Walk across certain dealership lots, and the sight feels almost surreal. Rows of shiny vehicles stand motionless, as if trapped in a photograph. A sedan that arrived in the spring is still parked months later, dust collecting on its windshield. A truck that rolled in under winter clouds has barely moved, its tires pressed flat into the asphalt by sheer immobility. This inventory glut is not a temporary hiccup. For many dealers, it is the defining image of the new era. Consumers remain hesitant after years of pandemic markups, wary of being taken advantage of again. Shattered trust meets shifting product mixes, leaving models that once flew off the lot stranded like ornaments in a forgotten showroom. Every day a vehicle sits unsold, its freshness fades, and with it the likelihood of capturing full value. Sales staff shuffle the arrangement weekly, repositioning cars to make the lot appear lively. Yet buyers can sense the stillness. They notice that the same sport utility vehicle they admired months ago has not moved an inch. In an industry built on motion, stagnation becomes a public signal of weakness. The frozen lots whisper a truth louder than any advertisement. The system is stuck, and the longer they sat, the cost of standing still became fatal. Floor plan is a noose. Every unsold vehicle identification number is a bill coming due. Unlike a grocery store that pays cash for goods, dealerships rely on floor plan loans to finance their inventory. Each car is essentially borrowed money sitting on four wheels, and every passing day adds interest to the tally. When cars sell quickly, the interest is manageable. When they linger, the debt spiral tightens like a rope around the business. Consider the dealer staring at 400 days of inventory on a slow-moving model. That is more than a year of interest payments on a depreciating asset, eroding profit margins to nothing. Multiply this by dozens of vehicles, and the math turns toxic. Managers are forced into desperate measures: bulk auctions, wholesale transfers, or dramatic markdowns just to clear the books. Yet each move sacrifices profitability and strains relationships with manufacturers. The interest ticking away in the background is invisible to most buyers, but inside the office it becomes an unbearable drumbeat. Owners defer maintenance on facilities, cut advertising budgets, and even delay payroll to keep the loans current. Floor plan lending, once a silent backbone of retail operations, transforms into the very noose choking them. But the real split was not just between models, it was between entire brands. Brands that vanish overnight. Some badges move like oxygen, others suffocate. In today's fractured market, brand trust has become the single strongest currency. Step onto a Toyota or Hyundai lot, and the energy is unmistakable. Cars arrive on transporters in the morning and vanish into driveways by the evening. These fast movers succeed because consumers believe in their dependability and value. Even as new regulations shuffle model mixes, the confidence gap works like a tailwind. Shoppers know what they are buying, and they move quickly to close the deal. Now wander through an Audi or Jaguar showroom. The difference is stark. Vehicles gleam under showroom lights, but they barely budge. The same sport utility vehicle that looked fresh in April still sits untouched in September. Buyers no longer feel compelled to pay premium prices when the reputation gap has widened. Luxury stagnation has set in, and in a climate where wallets are strained and patience is thin, prestige alone cannot carry the weight. Consumers remember the post-pandemic years when some luxury brands demanded $10,000 or even $20,000 above sticker. That memory lingers, poisoning today's sales efforts. Reputation is now as valuable as horsepower, and those who squandered trust are paying the price. And when supply turns political, the sales model turns inside out. The franchise shield cracks. The castle walls did not fall, they eroded. For nearly a century, franchise laws gave dealers insulation from direct manufacturer pressure. These rules guaranteed exclusivity in their territories and assured that buyers had to pass through the local showroom to secure a new vehicle. But that old protection now looks fragile. Under mounting emissions mandates and shifting product mixes, automakers are exercising new leverage over their retail partners. Allocation control has become a weapon. Original equipment manufacturers decide which models flow into which markets, prioritizing compliant vehicles where penalties loom largest. Dealers accustomed to steady supplies of best sellers now find themselves begging for allotments while staring at rows of models that consumers never requested. Exclusivity, once the cornerstone of the system, has lost much of its power in the age of instant online comparison. A buyer can check the true selling price in a neighboring city with a single click. The imbalance has shifted. Manufacturers, pressured by compliance requirements and shareholder expectations, are dictating more than ever before. Pricing guidance, marketing language, even how the customer experience should be delivered. Dealers who once thought themselves irreplaceable now see their role shrinking. One company already lives in that future, and their model suddenly looks like prophecy. Direct sales wasn't a gimmick. What looked rebellious now reads like a contingency plan. When Tesla launched with a direct sales model, many dismissed it as a quirky Silicon Valley experiment. Why bypass the proven dealership structure? Why shoulder the costs of manufacturer-owned stores and online infrastructure? The answer has become painfully clear. Direct sales gives the manufacturer total control over prices, over customer communication, and over where inventory flows. When market conditions shift, Tesla can slash or raise prices across the nation overnight. There is no need to negotiate with hundreds of dealer principals. When demand for a certain trim softens in Florida but spikes in California, cars can be rerouted quickly without bruised egos. The Tesla model removes the friction that is now dragging legacy brands into paralysis. This advantage has not gone unnoticed. Legacy automakers are experimenting with online-only launches for electric vehicles, or with manufacturer-controlled pop-up stores where the customer deals directly with the brand. They are searching for ways to replicate the agility that Tesla built into its foundation. For a long time, direct sales looked like rebellion. Now it looks like resilience. But even perfect distribution cannot save a business model if cash is bleeding out the back door. Discounts of desperation. These are not sales. They are lifeboats. Faced with clogged lots and rising pressure from manufacturers, many dealers are turning to clearance sales that would have been unimaginable only a few years ago. Thousands of dollars are being stripped off sticker prices. Markdown events stretch across entire weekends. Bargain hunters find themselves in an unfamiliar position. They have leverage. Managers who once fought tooth and nail to preserve profit margins now approve deals that barely cover costs. Vehicles are bundled into bulk sales, auctioned off, or paired with generous financing just to move metal. Each markdown is a concession, a public signal that the dealer cannot afford to wait for better days. For consumers, it feels like vindication after the painful years of pandemic markups. Yet, beneath the surface, the picture is more troubling. When waves of heavily discounted vehicles hit the road, they depress the used car market. Owners who bought in earlier years see resale values collapse. A used car crash begins to ripple outward, cutting equity out from under families who rely on trade-in value to afford their next purchase. Today's clearance sales may look like gifts, but they carry tomorrow's costs. Because when a dealership dies, a town feels it in the morning. Main Street's silent recession. Close the showroom. Dim the Friday night lights. In many small towns, the dealership was more than a place to buy cars. It was an employer, a sponsor of youth sports, and a source of steady tax revenue. When the doors close, the community feels the absence immediately. Local jobs disappear first. Salespeople lose commissions, technicians lose service work, and administrative staff face layoffs. Each job lost reverberates through the town with a multiplier effect. 100 dealership positions can mean 200 or even 300 total losses once you account for suppliers, restaurants, and small businesses that depended on steady paychecks. For many families, the loss of a dealership job is more than a paycheck. It means fewer meals at the local diner, fewer donations to church drives, and fewer opportunities for young people to stay in town. Each closure pulls another thread from the fragile fabric of community life. The community loss is cultural as well as financial. Town parades miss the banners once carried by proud dealers. High school teams lose a key sponsor. The sense of local pride erodes as empty lots turn into symbols of decline. Union alarm grows louder with every closure. Representatives warn that skilled mechanics may leave the region altogether, searching for work in larger metro areas, leaving behind hollowed-out communities. The silent recession does not make national headlines, but in counties across America, it is the story whispered in diners and community halls. A single closure reshapes Main Street, and where Main Street hurts, politics accelerates. Politics in overdrive, regulation minted enemies, and alliances nobody expected. In Washington and state capitals, the collapse of dealerships has become a policy brawl. Industry groups spend millions on lobbying to loosen emissions rules and restore some of the flexibility lost under transparency mandates. They argue that without relief, thousands of small businesses will vanish. Attorneys general wage their own AG fights, demanding accountability for years of questionable sales tactics. Consumer advocates counter with equal passion. They insist that tougher standards are necessary to protect buyers from inflated costs and to move the country toward cleaner transportation. Unions add another voice, demanding job protections and retraining programs for workers displaced by the turmoil. At times, union demands align with dealer lobbyists, at other times with consumer advocates. The result is policy gridlock, where no side holds a clear advantage. Behind closed doors, staffers admit that dealerships have become political litmus tests. Candidates visiting shuttered lots use them as backdrops to dramatize economic pain. Others highlight them as evidence of reform finally working. Each abandoned showroom becomes a stage where competing visions of America's economic future are argued under the harshest lights. Legislators sense the political stakes. Empty dealership lots are not just economic data points. They are campaign ads waiting to be written. Candidates point to the closures as proof of failed policy or necessary reform, depending on their platform. The debate turns every abandoned showroom into a symbol of the nation's direction. The markets noticed, and they started hunting. Wall Street on the hunt. Distress is a menu, and private equity is hungry. On Wall Street, collapsing dealerships do not look like tragedies. They look like opportunities. Publicly traded dealer groups see their stock prices diverge based on inventory turnover and brand exposure. Those with weak positions become prime targets. Private equity firms circle, eyeing distressed assets that can be scooped up, consolidated, and streamlined. Mergers and acquisitions accelerate. A struggling chain in the Midwest might suddenly find itself absorbed into a larger network, promising efficiency. The allure is not just the physical assets. Service departments still produce steady revenue. Customer databases represent long-term value. Even when front-end sales collapse, these pieces hold weight in the digital age. Private equity firms are not just after buildings and lots. They are harvesting customer data, service histories, and financing relationships. These digital assets can be mined for years, long after a showroom has disappeared. In the eyes of investors, the collapse is not an ending, but a restructuring of value. Yet the risks remain real. Consolidated giants face the same compliance burdens as the independents they swallow. If consumer demand does not recover, even the most aggressive buyouts may stumble. Investors treat the crisis like a chessboard, but one bad move could wipe out millions. For now, the flow of money toward distressed assets continues, reshaping the ownership landscape of auto retail. And the supply chain? It is not a chain. It is a spine, and it is cracking. Cracks in the supply spine. When the showrooms slow, the service bays echo. The collapse of dealerships does not stop at the front door. Lenders who provide the capital for daily operations feel the strain when repayments stall. Banks begin to reassess exposure, tightening credit or pulling out entirely. Suppliers suffer as well. Regional advertising firms lose contracts. Local parts distributors see orders dry up. Even car wash services and cleaning crews feel the sting of canceled budgets. Service decline cuts deeper into the community fabric. Fewer new cars sold means fewer warranty claims processed locally. Owners must travel farther for authorized repairs. Independent shops may pick up some work, but the steady flow that kept local suppliers alive begins to falter. The aftermarket disruption spreads quickly, touching everyone connected to the ecosystem. Consider the ripple effect on local vendors. A dealership that once ordered hundreds of promotional banners or community radio spots now cancels entirely. Printers, broadcasters, and sign makers suddenly lose major clients. The collapse reveals how many small businesses lived in the shadow of auto retail, tethered to its heartbeat. The collapse is not limited to one sector. It is a domino effect. Every skipped loan payment, every reduced parts order, every canceled contract pushes another business closer to the edge. The dealership may be the first to close its doors, but the shockwave rattles outward, shaking the entire supply spine of the region. But the biggest shift is not financial. It is cultural. America's transparency tide. The middleman era is ending, gently, then all at once. For decades, industries from real estate to retail thrived on layers of intermediaries who controlled information. Agents held the listings, department stores controlled the shelves, and dealerships controlled the sticker. But the cultural shift toward transparency and direct-to-consumer models is sweeping across America. Buyers now demand to see behind the curtain, and technology gives them the power to do so. In housing, online platforms let families tour properties and compare prices without a realtor's filter. In fashion, global brands sell directly through their own websites, bypassing stores that once dominated shopping malls. Even in healthcare, patients book virtual visits and order prescriptions straight from providers. The auto industry's current crisis mirrors this wave almost perfectly. The dealership, once the gatekeeper of price and availability, is being unseated by tools that place that knowledge directly in the hands of the buyer. The demand for transparency is not just generational, it is cultural. Customers raised in an on-demand economy expect clarity in every purchase. Hidden margins feel like betrayal. The shift is irreversible. Once people taste control over pricing and choice, they rarely surrender it. Dealership opacity now feels like an artifact of another age. This cultural shift does not simply expose old practices, it redefines expectations. A generation raised on transparent pricing in retail apps and online banking does not accept opacity as normal. They see it as an insult. The transparency tide that pulled down real estate commissions and squeezed retail giants is now crashing into showrooms. And in the eye of that storm, a new pricing logic takes hold. The new pricing logic. Margins will not vanish, they will migrate. The collapse of dealership markups and hidden add-ons does not erase profit, it changes where it can be found. Instead of front-end gross from the sale itself, manufacturers and dealers who survive will pivot to lifecycle revenue. That means turning the car into a platform rather than a product. Subscription models are already appearing. Heated seats can be unlocked for a monthly fee. Software updates promise new features delivered over the air. Even performance upgrades are being packaged as digital downloads rather than mechanical changes. Each one turns a one-time sale into a recurring stream. Lifecycle revenue also flows from certified service plans, extended warranties, and branded financing arrangements. Profit is stretched across years, not captured in a single day at the lot. For automakers, these new streams of lifecycle revenue are more predictable than one-off sales. Recurring subscriptions can smooth quarterly earnings and reassure investors. Yet this stability comes with risk. Push consumers too far with endless upsells, and trust collapses again. The delicate balance between innovation and exploitation will decide the winners. This new pricing logic aligns with the direct-to-consumer culture. Customers expect ongoing relationships with the brands they buy, whether through apps, updates, or digital ecosystems. The companies that adapt will thrive. Those that cling to the old model of single transaction margins will be left behind. But policy is the metronome, and it just changed the beat. Policy roulette. One election can redraw a balance sheet. Dealers and manufacturers alike live in a climate of policy swings where the difference between survival and collapse may hinge on the ballot box. Federal standards for emissions and fuel economy set one course, while state rules chart another. Court rulings add uncertainty, and lawsuits pile up as industries seek clarity. Scenario planning has become as critical as marketing strategy. Election risks are not theoretical. A White House committed to aggressive clean air goals means tighter rules and faster electrification. A shift in administration could delay or roll back targets, offering temporary relief to traditional manufacturers, but creating chaos for those who invested heavily in compliance. Federal versus state rules deepen the divide, forcing automakers to juggle dual strategies, one for strict states, another for looser ones. Dealerships caught in the middle cannot predict with certainty which vehicles will be winners in 3 years. Policy roulette keeps investment cautious and growth hesitant. No business model can scale confidently, while the rulebook itself keeps changing. Dealers may once have feared competition most. Now they fear uncertainty. And for the buyer standing in the lot, the stakes get personal. You've seen how fragile this system really is, and the next moves will decide everything. Don't just scroll away. Hit subscribe right now. The buyer's crossroads. A bargain today, a service desert tomorrow. For consumers, the collapse of dealerships presents a double-edged choice. In the short term, clearance sales and markdowns deliver deals that seem irresistible. Families walk away with new cars at prices not seen in years, but hidden costs lurk beneath the shine. As more dealerships close, service access shrinks. Warranty work may require driving an hour or more to reach an authorized center. Routine maintenance becomes less convenient and potentially more expensive. The resale crash looms as well. A flood of discounted vehicles can depress used prices for years, leaving buyers underwater when they try to trade in. Consumer choices that feel smart in the moment may carry long-term financial strain. This dilemma defines the crossroads. Do buyers seize bargains while they last, or hold back in fear of hidden costs down the road? The collapse of the dealership model has shifted not only how cars are sold, but how households plan their financial future. Every driveway becomes part of the story, because this meltdown is not just about cars. It is about how power shifts in America. The collapse you just watched isn't some distant story. It's unfolding around you. Prices, jobs, and even communities are shifting, and most people won't see it until it's too late. But you know now, so don't leave without taking action. Hit like if you want the truth pushed further. Share this with someone who needs to hear it before the headlines spin it. And subscribe right now, because the next chapter is already breaking, and if you're not here for it, you'll be the last to know.